From the new recording lair located deep beneath the Wine and Spirit store in Ephrata, Pennsylvania.
You're listening to the Masonic Lite podcast.
Studio 665 presents Masonic Lite podcast. This show is recorded by Masons, for Masons, and is for entertainment purposes only. And please, no wagering.
This podcast is not endorsed by any Grand Lodge, and the ridiculous ramblings of the hosts are their own. And now, here's your host.
A big...
This is great. I love it.
Those of you, if we're still recording this, we just got a visual countdown for Pete with fingers on the Zoom screen, and he got to 0 and froze.
That's the internet for you.
Boom. Dude, what are you on, dial-up?
Amish internet. He's been hanging out with Dutchy Doug.
Goodness.
They haven't run those wires to the Gap Lighthouse yet.
So
welcome, everybody.
Welcome. We have a big cast of characters on tonight. We have...
No. Take 2. Take 3, whatever.
Come in on your phone, Pete.
Yeah. The bottom of the invite's a phone number you can dial into audio. You can keep the audio.
So you keep driving, you record the show, and I'll call back in. But don't keep all this garbage. It's awesome.
I've not stopped recording. So
yeah, stuff like this never happens on our podcast. I don't know.
Like B-roll.
We just want you to see how the pros do it.
Exactly.
Behind the wizard's curtains here.
Yeah.
And see, now you know the reason for the alcohol.
Now we know why we need like eight practices for night's quarantine.
Right.
Yes. So we'll talk more. Since we're recording this, we should tell the audience we're going to talk more about the night's quarantine later on in the episode. But we have something very special coming up for you with our next episode. But details to follow.
So why don't we go around the horn and, as our normal custom is, even though we're on lockdown, what has everyone been doing Masonically over the last few weeks? Why don't we start with Jack Harley?
Well, nothing. Actually, I've been very busy. I've been very busy composing this degree that we're going to do. Very excited about it. We're, again, more later, but that's been taking up most of my last 2 weeks, Masonically speaking anyway. But the what I have noticed, just because I had to go out to the grocery store today, I had no idea how many times in the course of a day I put my hand to my face. Nose, eyes, eyebrows, wipe end, just whatever. It's amazing. And you never think about it, right? But until now.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Larry, you been doing anything Masonically?
Yes.
Really?
And Josh, I'm taking just some of Josh's thunder. Lamberton Lodge had a unofficial meeting last night on Zoom, which I attended.
Awesome.
And it was really great to get together. Our deputy district grandmaster was there. Josh ran it. I mean, it was nice. So yeah, I
You have to go through all the protocols and everything that you would do normally?
No.
A long way.
We had a profane person come in by the name of Dixie Smith. We don't know who the hell she was.
Oh, okay. Uh-oh.
We threatened her and she got out of there real quick.
Okay. Well, we're going to time it, right? So, Josh, why don't you follow up anything? Tell us a little bit more about that, or anything else you've been doing Masonically?
Not really. I mean, other than set that meeting up and then get in touch with the membership and reach out and see how everybody's doing. Haven't really been doing a whole lot.
How many people did you have at your meeting last night?
I think there was 16 showed up.
Wow, that's impressive.
That's more than a regular meeting, right?
Yeah, I was going to say that's more than a regular meeting.
Absolutely.
Pete, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, tell us what you've been doing Masonically recently.
All I've been doing is every once in a while playing Tall Cedar Scribe and mailing things, and that's it. Really nothing. I'm really happy to have the break.
Yeah. Okay, Seth Anthony, how about you?
Oh, hi.
Hi.
I've actually managed to stay relatively busy as with things being shut down. I attended the 4th degree for the Scottish Rite for the Northern Masonic jurisdiction last week and enjoyed that. So kudos to them for doing something new and unique and interesting. They're doing the 17th degree coming up. It does star George Heinzman, so there's that. But we'll make it work. A little shout out for George there. I've also got 3 HGA papers in my email box from Yasser to review. So I've got lots of reading ahead of me at some point to be done, amongst other writings and things I've been doing. So it's a good break to catch up on writing things other than minutes. So I'm with Pete on that one.
Great. And our guest, Matt Appel, been anything Masonically in the last few weeks?
Sounds a lot like what everyone else has said. We had a Sunday night, we recorded our podcast, and then Monday we had a education team meeting for the district, and yesterday was our lodge's Zoom meeting. And we're doing the same thing. Like Josh was saying, we're trying to call, especially the guys who are over 60 who are in the lodge, and keep tabs on them. And so I've been doing a lot of that because I'm secretary of our lodge too. So it never ends.
It's good. We've got a quorum of secretaries here tonight, I think.
We do have a quorum of secretaries.
I will never be secretary. I'm out. Okay. Bye.
Is that a murder or a Congress?
Yeah, right. So I have been on. Jack, I want to thank you for the idea that you brought forward about calling folks within Ephrata Lodge. I pitched that to our worshipful master, and we're a rather large lodge, as most of you know. We have right at 700 members, and we have 500 that are 60 or older. And so this week, I believe just about everybody has completed their calls. They broke them into groups of 25 and sent them out. And, we've gotten some good information of people who were not well that we didn't know about. Mm-hmm. We got a ton of people who said, hey, I'm great and I want to do something. So if anybody needs anything, let me know, which was awesome. So it was just really good to reach out to folks, some that we haven't seen in lodge in 20 years, but they were like, wow, we were really impressed. You called us. Thank you very much. We have members that are in like 20 different states. So reaching out to them was particularly special, and they were really impressed with that. We're going to go through our younger members on the next pass through just so that everybody gets a phone call at some point. Mm-hmm. We're also calling our widows. The worshipful master himself is actually calling the widows that we have contact information for.
That's great.
Which is really cool. So, and then other than that, every night, as we said in our last podcast, every night at 9:00 Eastern time, we're hosting a toast to absent brethren on Zoom. It's open to anybody. You can get the link. We'll make sure we've got the updated link on our Facebook page for the podcast, but or you can go to the Eureka West Shore Lodge 302 website and get that. And we've had folks from 6 or 7 different states coming to that. We're averaging about 20 people per night, and Jack's holding up a peace sign. Oh,
no, that's because Seth was taking a picture.
Okay. All right. So other than that, I'm just taking care of some secretarial things, calling some delinquents from Ubar Grotto who haven't paid their dues yet. Yep, I see that hand.
They're all delinquents at Ubar Grotto. Thank you.
That's part of the requirement. But, so we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk to Matt Appel, who is the host of the Working Tools podcast.
Why choose George J. Grove & Sons for your next home improvement project? At George J. Grove & Sons, we've built our reputation on quality and trust for more than 50 years. From planning to materials to installation, George J. Grove promises a home improvement experience second to none. Whether your goal is reducing energy costs, decreasing maintenance, updating curb appeal, or simply increasing the value of your home, the George J. Grove team will recommend and provide solutions that stand the test of time. Call 717-393-0859 for an estimate or visit us at georgejgrove.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back. We're here at Masonic Lite Podcast, and our special guest this evening is Brother Matthew Appel, who is the host of the Working Tools Podcast. Welcome, Matthew.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here.
So where are you based out of? Washington State?
Yes, I'm just north of Seattle. Yep, and
Okay, and
Isn't that Canada?
just about.
he didn't say a boot, so it's not that close.
No, that's true.
We're closer to Vancouver than to Portland here, so.
So how is everybody faring out there with the coronavirus?
The guys in our lodge seem to be doing all right. We've had I know of a couple, I think one Mason who's sick and one who's passed away from the coronavirus out here. But it's everybody, like I said earlier, we've been calling the guys in our lodge, and we haven't had anyone say that they've been feeling ill or anything. So we're keeping our fingers crossed on that front. As far as outside of lodge goes, they just announced, I guess it was day before yesterday, that they're going to close school for the rest of the year. So
Oh, wow.
I have one kid who's very excited about this, and one kid who whooped around the house going, "There's no school!" So,
So everybody, Matt really stepped up to the plate. Our guest fell through, and I put a distress call out on Facebook, and he must know what idiots we are, because he wrote back. He says, "I'm available and I have a microphone." So I'm like, well, you're overqualified if you have a microphone.
Yeah, I've been listening to the podcast, you guys' podcast, for quite some time, and it's enjoyable. I actually have a connection to Central Pennsylvania. My wife's from Harrisburg, and she's still a member of. It was Estrelita chapter. I think it's now Harrisburg chapter OES.
Mm-hmm.
And
They just merged all the Harrisburg chapters.
Yep. I visited West Shore Lodge. I think it was like 681 or something like that.
Which is no more. It's now part of my lodge. We merged about 7 years ago with West Shore.
Yeah, it's been some time, but yeah, it's so I have a bit of a Masonic connection there. I have a sister who teaches in the Lancaster, or sister-in-law, excuse me, who teaches in the Lancaster School District, and she lives in Elizabethtown. So,
well, and you pronounce Lancaster right, so that that's a thing.
When I told my wife that you guys had said that maybe I could come on the podcast, she said, "You better pronounce it right." I'm originally from New Jersey, so I would say Lancaster, but then my wife would hit me.
So, Matthew, one of the ideas what we have been kicking around for a long time was a podcast about podcasts. So, since we have a captive audience, tell us a little bit about the Working Tools and how you got started, because I think you're one of the podcasts that preceded ours.
I don't know.
Maybe?
I don't think so. And actually, I was not on it before this podcast existed. That's for sure.
Okay.
It was started by a couple of guys up in the Grand Lodge of British Columbia and the Yukon, and it sort of expanded over time to a couple of guys from here in Washington joined in, and so now we have 3 hosts, 2 of whom are in Washington, and still one guy up in BC. And we talk about things that are, we talk more about stuff internationally and around this area as opposed to like generic Masonic stuff, just because it's what we know. So we stick with that. But it's a lot of fun to do. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and when I found out this guy I know, David Colbeth, one of the co-hosts, was on it, I sort of horned my way on to the podcast, and I just haven't left yet. So they keep recording when I'm there.
Well, that's how Jack and Tim got on the air here.
Yeah.
Inertia is a powerful force.
They say, well, come on in. It's fine.
Coming out of the liquor store next door, and they said, "Hey, we need some."
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about the format of your podcast, or how often do you guys do your episodes? Just tell us a little bit more about the working tools in general.
So we're cheap. So we use Zoom for all our podcasts, but we have the free version. So our podcast episodes are only 30 minutes long because Zoom boots us out. We release Sunday evening, Monday morning, Sunday evening time frame. Sunday evening, I guess it is. Sunday evening our time. It's probably Sunday afternoon for you guys. And then and it goes out, and we record every other Sunday every other Sunday, and then we record 2 or 3 episodes at a time because they're relatively short. We like to do interviews with local Masons. So we had the Grand Secretary of Washington on, the Grand Master of Washington on, a couple of luminaries from the Grand Lodge of BC and the Yukon that talked about their cancer card program and a few other things that are going on up there. So we try to have a little bit more of a local flavor, kind of like you guys have a central Pennsylvania flavor to it. We like to keep that going here too.
Very cool. And you guys have anything on tap that you're planning? Any special shows or special guests that you'd want to promote?
Well, our next recording session actually is going to be tomorrow. We're going to the District 8 here in Washington has a weekly education session via Zoom. And so we're going to head up there, or via Zoom. I'm not actually going anywhere, and be a part of that. And then we're going to talk to the guy who organized it about using Zoom to get Masons to closer together and how different communication methods and that sort of stuff. So that one should come out, I guess, this coming Sunday.
So I guess we'll open this up to everybody else, and I'll do my typical. I'm going to shut up for a little bit. Zoom seems to have been like the big game changer here during this whole COVID-19. So Matthew, since you're our guest, I'll let you start. Tell us a little bit more about how you guys are making use of the video conferencing.
Yeah, we're OG. We were using Zoom before the COVID. But we've been using it, and it works great. Like I said, we always were trying to do half-hour episodes, and this way the 40-minute time frame definitely enforces that. But it seems to work out pretty well for us, generally speaking. We haven't been Zoom bombed by anybody yet while we were trying to record or anything.
Keep hoping.
Exactly. So yeah, it's worked out well for us, and we record it, and you strip the audio and send the audio out too. So.
I love it. This is so old school.
You're being Zoom bombed by the
Zoom bombed by the dogs.
I'm going to hit
I thought that was a past master.
Well, that too, probably.
So the joke is that my company started using Zoom for conferencing because of some of the distances we have to cover, and my boss back in January said, this is a really useful technology. I think I'm going to invest in this company. Don't you know he bought Zoom in January, and it's already doubled since he bought it? So yeah, hate the guy. Yes, I do. Yep.
You sure he's not in Congress?
I don't know. Well, anyway, don't get me started. Don't get me started now. But
once we've gotten past the glitches of bad internet connections and so on like that, it's been pretty effective, especially when we have guests that are outside of the area like yourself, and certainly now with us all scattered and unable to get to deep beneath the wine and spirits store. It's enabled us to continue on, and things like the nightly toast, for example. A lot of good fellowship going on. People are reaching out in ways like Jack put the bug in our ear about reaching out and contacting our members, of making phone calls.
in our lodge, we're calling it 20 for 20. So it's 2020. So 20. The objective was to get 20 guys to call 20 guys. That covers most of our membership. Yeah.
And we have a guy from Jack's Lodge that's on just about every night, Jay Laser, who's been a frequent guest before. And we've had several district deputies from the area. Like I said, I think we've had 6 different states that have popped on at some point, which is really cool. We've learned about different jurisdictions, like why Massachusetts doesn't number their lodges anymore. And then we did have the one kerfuffle when we had one from Massachusetts and one from Virginia on, and we had the discussion about who was the oldest Grand Lodge, which was fun.
Yeah, just Pennsylvania.
Well, that was it. Most of us were from Pennsylvania.
That Grand Lodge closed and went bankrupt. So.
Exactly.
So, who is Matt? Who is your coolest guest that you've had on the show? I've listened to a couple episodes and just kind of listening to see who's been on. Who do you think is the coolest?
Well, I'm probably obligated, since I'm the district deputy, I'm probably obligated to say that it was the Grand Master who was our
don't do there you go. All right. That's been Matt Appel. Thanks for joining us, Matt.
Well, as I like to say, a Grand Master in Washington State's kind of like a district deputy in Pennsylvania.
Oh, you got in trouble the last time you said that.
Make it 4 states I can't visit.
I will absolve myself of that comment.
But, no, we had I can't remember the brother's name off the top of my head, but there's a brother who works at the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, and we had him on. It was actually the first episode that they let me sit in on, and he was on along with one of our past grandmasters, and they talked about Masons in baseball, and that was an interesting episode. I'm not a huge baseball fan, but I still found it pretty interesting what they were talking about.
Cy Young, Ty Cobb, a couple others, yeah.
Point of order: one of my longest and most painful Masonic experiences was marching with the Grand Commander in Little League, where we stood in place for 5 hours to walk like 12 minutes and then go home.
Nice. I'm sure that was a much cooler story than it sounded like. You froze a little bit in the middle of that.
Well, why don't we take a quick break and come back? We'll have more with Matt Appel, and we'll talk about a few other things.
At the historic Smithton Inn of Ephrata, Pennsylvania, we're pleased to serve the latest creations from Weathered Vineyard Winery, along with spirits from Thistlefinch Distillery in Lancaster, all to be experienced in the tasting room of a beautifully restored 18th century bed and breakfast. Cigars by D&S Cigar are available for your enjoyment in the courtyard. The historic Smithton Inn is convenient to Lancaster County's most interesting attractions. Just minutes from the Ephrata Cloister and the Green Dragon Farmers Market, and a short drive can get you to charming Lidditz, thriving downtown Lancaster, as well as Hershey, Bird in Hand, and Intercourse, or Valley Forge and Gettysburg. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway or an active vacation full of sightseeing and attractions, the historic Smithton Inn will be a welcoming oasis from everyday life, one that you'll want to visit again and again. Stop in and visit at 900 West Main Street in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, or check out our website at historicsmithtoninn.com, or simply call us at 717-733-6094. Just ask for Past Master Dave.
So, Matt, is there anything other than promoting your show, which we're happy to do, anything you'd like to talk about in particular? Anything that we're missing that we should be talking about? Help us out here. Help us help you.
Gosh, I mean, I appreciate the publicity. I'm certain we have fewer listeners than you do. So it's always great to spread the word. And it's very meta to talk about podcasts on a podcast, I guess. It's kind
of like inside baseball, right?
Yep. But no, I was like I said, I'm deputy of our district here and secretary of our lodge, so it's an interesting load of work, and that frequently bleeds onto the podcast just because, for obvious reasons. but I've always enjoyed Masonic education. I was briefly on the Masonic education committee before they booted me here in Grand Lodge, and it's opportunities like this where you get to reach out to people from all over the place. Like I said, we use Zoom because we've got a guy who lives an hour from me on the podcast, and another one who lives like 5 or 7 hours, and just the opportunity to get together and share our experiences and the education from the different places and around here is really great. And I actually, when they first canceled all Masonic meetings around here, they're canceled till the 1st of May, at least. I sort of thought, I wonder if there are going to be orders that are just going to go away. If I don't know what if the order of Bob's Lodge decides that, we can't start up again, it's not worth it, and they just die off. But I've actually think that a lot of these experiences on Zoom and on being forced, if you will, to call our brothers and check on them and see how they're doing are really actually increasing our opportunities for Masonic education and for tightening those bonds. I've called guys in our attempt to call people from our lodge that I've never spoken with before, and that said, "Oh yeah, I remember. I was a member of that lodge. And what lodge is that? And oh yeah, you changed your name, didn't you?" And so it's been great just to form those bonds again and to strengthen them. And I honestly am somewhat optimistic at this point that when we come out the other side, we're going to see a little more involvement and a little more education and a little more learning in our lodges. I have always said there's 3 different kinds of lodges. There's educational, and there's charity, and there's social. And, every lodge has some combination of those things, but every lodge sort of focuses more or less on one of them. And the fact that now I know I can get my Masonic education from another lodge that might be far away, but I can participate in that and be a part of their efforts, I think it's going to be a really valuable thing moving forward.
So when you're talking about Masonic education specifically at the first part of what you were just saying,
before I started rambling, yeah.
Well, no, it was great. What Masonic education are you talking about specifically? What does that look like in your area? What's your important part?
Well, that's an interesting bone of contention. So in my version of Masonic education would be, what my ideal would be is we would sit around in lodge, and maybe we would get form a circle in the middle of the lodge or something like that, and say, hey, I am having this problem, and I've how can we work on this, and how does the 24-inch gauge apply to this scenario? And hey, Bill, you had a problem like that, didn't you? How did you think about this, and how did the lessons of Masonry apply to this scenario? And that sort of practical stuff would be great, because we talk a lot about that in our ritual. At least we do out here. Your ritual, from what I understand, is a little wacky, but we talk a lot about.
Ours is correct, by the way.
Oh, sorry, correct. Yes, we talk a lot about that sort of thing in our ritual, and it never really happens. We never get the applied stuff. I know there's a couple of programs like the Applied Masonry program Juan Sepulveda runs, and there's a few other things like that.
As a thing, yeah. So,
that would be the biggest chunk of Masonic education if I were ruling the galaxy. We do end up having conversations on history and on that sort of stuff, which are valuable, and I love them, but I don't know that that's what I would come to lodge for personally. And again, my Masonry doesn't have to be everybody's Masonry, but that's my opinion.
I think Larry has a question.
No, he's just having a spasm.
He was having a bowel movement. I'm sorry.
Hey, that's not funny.
Sorry, Larry.
Not for you.
Fortunately, we're in very different rooms, right?
But no, we actually, our district runs a lodge leadership retreat for the masters and wardens of the lodges in the district every year. And so one of the presentations we do is about Masonic education and trying to get it into your lodge, because again, another soapbox of mine, nobody goes to meetings. You go to meetings that you value. When you get some value out of it is why you would go, right? So what value is there in opening, closing, reading the minutes? Although as secretary reading the minutes, clearly the highlight of the meeting. But there's no voting on what color of beige to paint the walls doesn't bring value to the members. The value is in
yes.
what should that light bulb be? Yeah, that doesn't help anything. Nobody values that conversation.
The sad thing is, several years ago, it was determined in Pennsylvania that we no longer had to read the minutes. And yet I still go to lodges where they read the minutes. And I'm like, you all have complained about this for decades. Why are you still doing this? And it's like, well, we've always done it.
Yep.
So it's like, stop.
But the concept of applied masonry, I think, is really something that could catch fire. That's something that we really don't talk about. And I probably go overboard on the esoteric side and the philosophical side and the blah, blah, blah side. But applying it to life is really important. And we certainly don't do enough of that.
Yeah. I joined Masonry right after my daughter was born. My wife's father was a Mason out in Pennsylvania, and I joined. He had passed away already. I joined, and my daughter had just been born. I didn't have a job, and my wife did, so I was going to be the stay-at-home parent, and I was desperate for the company of other adults, and so that's kind of why I joined, is to be with other men and to do manly things and sit around and talk and have a drink or whatever.
I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, but that's after I heard the rituals and I started thinking about them and I started contemplating some of this stuff. That's not what I want out of Masonry anymore. Which is, again, it's fine for other people. It's not. I always say what my lodge does and my Masonry doesn't have to be your Masonry. It's a good thing that they're different. But right now I'm looking for those lessons to apply to my life to make good men better, and that sort of thing. That it's a different experience.
Yeah, that might be one of the things I think we could take from all this is if we have to do something private, we could do that in the tiled lodge, but you could close the lodge and while all the men are still there, then turn on the webcam and then have your program and have some other things that people could watch remotely. Maybe they can't get to lodge. Lamberton, we have a hybrid. We have a brother that's in Australia, and he would love to pay attention, but it's yesterday there or tomorrow, so he can't be there. But I think he would love to be able to check in and see us, but it's not secure.
Yeah, we had a guy who joined the lodge right before I did, who he moved to Wisconsin in 2006, I think. And so this is the first time I've seen him in years was when he showed up to a Zoom meeting. And yeah, hey, there you are. His name is Robert Johnson. He's not the podcaster, but it was just great to see his face again.
Very cool.
All right, well, let's take a quick break. We're going to come back. And now since you also happen to be a secretary, it's appropriate. And then we'll have a little discussion on secretaries and special guest Seth Anthony. We're going to let you drive the short bus for a little bit.
You are about to take a journey to a place not of sorrow and darkness, but of mirth and light. On your journey, you will meet with strange, interesting people and discover a magical network of communication that will bring long-forgotten friends directly to your fingertips. Join Masonic Lite Podcast as they explore this strange new world live on the interwebs. Your donation will contribute to Meals on Wheels, who bring food and comfort to neighbors living in isolation. Go to eventbrite.com, that's eventbrite.com, and search for Digital Order of Knights Quarantine, and join the cast as we seek light together in this time of darkness. Be with us for a live recording on Wednesday, April 22nd at 7 p.m. Eastern. Until then, be the light.
Whenever you want to come back, Seth, you can drive.
Okay. Well, so Pete had talked about his experiences as a new secretary and as a veteran secretary, and as I like to refer to it, a secretary of last resort. I have lots of experience coming into situations where things have not gone well as a secretary, and they sort of just hand them to you and say, here you go, figure it out. And with Tim being a secretary of one of the larger lodges in the state, and our guest Matt also being a secretary, my title for this sequence was Things Your Secretary Wished You Knew and Understood, but You Don't. Because I think there's a lot of those things out there that the average member doesn't really understand, the perilous life of a secretary and where our authority starts and stops, and what we can actually do versus what people think we have magic powers to make happen.
You don't have magic powers?
Secretaries seem like they have magic powers many times, but most of that just ends with being able to operate Microsoft Word better than others. That's our magic power. The ability to keep a spreadsheet is our magic power.
Nice.
Yeah, so as I was thinking about this, I think the first thing I wish everybody knew for secretaries is pay your damn dues on time. That's the really simple answer. The challenge of people waiting or being delinquent in dues is always a nightmare for me. And I'm sure Tim has some of those as well. Council dues were technically due March 31st. I still have 16 delinquent members on council dues. In my file and list, Jack's showing off shot glasses from Effort Lodge. Very nice, very nice. Yeah, it's funny. I've had guys tell me, I'll pay dues on the last possible day, like it's some sort of protest that they will wait to pay their dues. Like, who do you think you're like injuring in this process? It's just me who's trying to file an annual return. So with that,
they're getting like 0.08% interest on that money these days. So, you know.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, one of the things that, you know, again, being in a large lodge, just keeping up with the data of all of the members. First of all, historically, we've not done a good job of keeping up with data beyond the petition of a person. When I look even today, and we have one of the most robust data systems of anybody in the country in Pennsylvania. We use the Salesforce system. A lot of businesses use that. It's one of the most robust systems around. And when I go in and do a query on occupations, for example, I have no expectation of accuracy or that anything will be there beyond what the guy was doing when he petitioned the lodge 40 years ago. When I became secretary, I guess 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, we didn't have good addresses. We were getting a ton of mail back and just nothing was being done to correct that. We had very few email addresses, bad phone numbers, spouses that had died, 20 years ago and they had remarried, but we still had the old spouse attached to them. And I mean, it was embarrassing. And it was no fault of any previous secretary. It's just we didn't have the tools then to do anything about it. And today we do.
The lesson learned there, though, is the secretary doesn't know things unless you tell the secretary. He's not a prognosticator. If you don't tell me your address changed or something's happened in your life, I have no other way of knowing. That's right.
So one of the things that we started to do was when we send out the, I took the job, again, kind of as it was a last resort thing. They desperately needed somebody, and I agreed to do it, but I had conditions, and one of them was that I was going to drag, one of the largest lodges in the state of Pennsylvania kicking and screaming into the technological world, and they had to agree to it. And so everybody was like, sure, do whatever you need to do. And so they have never pushed back on any real recommendation that I've brought forward to them. And one of the things is we're going to quit mailing notices to people that have email addresses. And so we gave them a year where we were collecting updated information and all that kind of stuff. And to our older members, I told them, I said, give it a shot. If you come back to me after the fact and tell me you'd rather get it in the mail, I'll put you back on the list. And we email, out of our 800 members, we email about 530. And I've had 2 who've come back and said, I'd really like to get this in the mail. So that's pretty good. And anybody new coming in does not have an option. They only get the notice through email, which saves the lodge a ton of money. It saves me as secretary a ton of time. And yeah, other than that, Seth, you're right. I mean, chasing down people for dues. This year, we started hitting it really hard in September. And we were really out front with the fact that once we got past December 27th, if you had not paid your dues, you were no longer in good Masonic standing. Even though we wouldn't suspend you until March or April, you weren't in good Masonic standing. And we started to get support from our appendant bodies like Scottish Rite and the Shrine, who started to stop guys from coming into meetings who hadn't paid their lodge dues. And all that took was me sending the secretary of those bodies an email saying, here are the guys from 302 that haven't paid their dues. And we actually had a guy show up to an appendant body about to be installed as an officer. And it's like, unless your dues get paid before you walk through this door, first of all, you can't come through this door because you're not in good standing in the Blue Lodge, which means you're not in good standing in this appendant body. And
so Matt, do you have these same kinds of problems in Washington? Because I heard Washington was flawless in every possible Masonic way.
Well, that is true, but no, we have the exact same problems. Yeah, people not paying their dues for whatever reason. We've got one guy in our lodge who I swear, I've been deputy or secretary rather for 7 years now, I think, and so our process, we drop you after you haven't paid your dues for 2 years. So I'll drop him after 2 years, and then I'll get this letter from him that that I'll drop him in on December 31st, and sometime in February I'll get a letter saying, "Oh, why did you drop me?" And then I'll pay those 2 years worth of dues, and then 2 years later I'll drop him again because he hasn't paid his dues for 2 years, and it's crazy. And I also really agree with what Tim was saying about communication. Don't assume that because you told the master something that I know it. Just, don't assume that communication happens. And frankly, if you're the one of the 8 guys who comes up to the secretary's desk after the gavel falls at the end of the meeting to tell me something, I might not remember it. So you might want to send me an email afterwards to remind me, because
that is the singular reason I will never be secretary, because I am so ADD that I could never follow like the 9 people that just swarm the desk after the meeting and do it. Seth, you don't have that problem, do you?
No, certainly not at Masonic Week as a grand secretary and people come flooding up and all of that stuff. So let me ask this important question. What is the ideal length of service time for a secretary? Anybody can answer that.
Life.
Jack has his hand up.
Life.
And every secretary just quit on you, Jack.
So our lodge is 104 years old. We have had 8 secretaries.
Wow.
Oof. God bless them.
Yeah, let's just let that kind of settle in.
Here's what I'll say. When I took the job thinking I wanted to go, what is it? You got to go 6 years to get a secretary's jewel. I wanted to go that long and then kind of play it by ear. But now that I've gotten in and I've cleaned up the mess and I've kind of gotten into a routine, I think when it ceases to be enjoyable for me, and I do enjoy interacting with the members, and every worshipful master is different. You get some that you're really glad to see December 27th come, and others you wish they could have another year. But I think somewhere probably 6 to 10 years ought to be a total max. The problem with setting a standard like that is you got to be, I think the standard should be, can you keep up with what is required in terms of the record keeping in the way that it needs to be kept? We have a lot of secretaries in Pennsylvania that have been secretaries for a while and have no intent on improving things.
Well, there are some guys that take those quill pens, the crossed quill pens.
They take those seriously.
That's
they
like a thing. Yeah.
And sorry, boys, those days are gone.
Yeah, we actually had a Grand Master a few years ago who tried to pass term limits for Grand Secretaries of 5 years. And that didn't pass, but it was an interesting series of conversations around that, just like you guys were saying. And I would have said then, yeah, probably 5 years is long enough, but gosh, it took me 2 years to figure out what the heck I was doing. I was master twice, and I still didn't know what the heck the secretary did. And it was a lot of learning that went into that. I don't know. Yeah, the guy who before me who was secretary for 15 years, and that seems a little long. But I don't know. That's 6 to 10 seems good to me.
I'll say technology makes the job a lot easier. The 6 months or 7 months, whatever it was, that I was secretary of Ubar Grotto, it's like a 7-month root canal because nothing was electronic. I mean, we had spreadsheets and things on Google Docs and things like that. But coming from like a Salesforce platform where I had like the world, and if my world didn't exist the way I wanted it, I could make it so.
Anytime you have the opportunity to enter the same data 6 times,
yep,
it's got to be good, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No chance for error.
I wanted no part of that.
Yeah, we're trying to encourage lodges in our district to appoint an assistant secretary. So, because frankly, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, someone can pick up the pieces eventually, but it's going to take them some time to figure out the idiosyncrasies of what I've been doing. So we're trying to get lodges to say, hey, let this guy be assistant secretary for whatever, 2 years, and then have the secretary step back and have him be the secretary and train a replacement to keep the knowledge flowing.
So, Larry, you were secretary of a lodge for 10 years, weren't you?
Me?
I just wanted to hear your voice, Larry. I just wanted to hear you.
I was chaplain of my lodge in South Carolina.
Chaplain, there you go.
Yes, indeed.
Was that because you could read? And there goes South Carolina.
So Pete,
Another state.
So Pete, as a new secretary, somebody who's been only dealing with this craziness for several months now, are you experiencing the same nightmare conditions that we've all described in some form or another?
Yeah, I mean, I've had the same couple gentlemen do the secretary and the treasurer job forever. So, we talked about it on a previous episode. People assume that you know everything. Well, they just assumed that I'm going to know when to file the taxes, how to file taxes, all these different forms. Well, at least with Tall Cedars now, I have a login to the national database, and I can see the forms, but they're still not online. I still have to print it and mail it. It's ridiculous, but we're getting there. We're getting there. I just hope to do my 5 years before Tall Cedars folds.
Oh, no, not going to happen. No.
Yeah, we were lucky enough in my lodge that the guy who was secretary before me was the second time I was master. Towards the end of my term, he was 78, I think, and he said, "When I'm 80, I don't want to be secretary anymore." And so we had a couple of years to do that transition because that's what kills you. Like you said, no one to file the taxes and no one when this report is due to Grand Lodge and whatever is some of the stuff that just it sneaks up on you.
So for me, the reason I enjoy being a secretary, and I volunteer to be a secretary of so many things, I have found that unlike the worshipful master or the presiding officer of a body who's only there for a year, the secretary has a really unique ability to provide a Masonic experience that no other officer has. You're the one who's communicating with the member, providing the notice. You're the one telling them when degree work's going to happen, communicating with them. As secretary for our AMD council and for our ACON chapel, I'm the one who sends the invitation letters with wax seals on them. And that's their first introduction to what is this body about and how is it like? And I think uniquely a secretary has the ability to set a standard for a body because they're the long-term memory, while the master sets the program and the vision. I think in a lot of ways, secretaries end up setting some basic standards. So I'll let that thought, I'll let that thought simmer and see how everybody reacts to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right. Matt, go ahead.
Oh, I agree. It depends a lot on who the master is. Some of the masters, so I was part of one of two lodges that merged while I was secretary, and the other lodges tradition, or not tradition isn't the right word, but practice was that they the secretary made the agenda and set the agenda for the meetings and that sort of stuff. And I sort of refused to do that because that's the master's job. I'll write it down, if you want me to, but I'm not going to, run the meeting from the chair next to the chair. So I forgot where I was going with this, but it sounded great at the time.
I had the opposite. I had the opposite situation. I came in as master and I said, okay, this is how we're going to do it. And this is what we're going to do. And the secretary said, okay, I'm done. He walked away.
I'd like to believe that, our current master is relying more on me, and then the previous guy didn't rely on me at all. And I'd like to believe that, like Seth Anthony was saying, you can provide that support that the lodge needs by supporting the master that way. Mm-hmm. And I agree that, sending out a letter to somebody who had petitioned the lodge saying that they've been accepted on, nice stationery and having it some quality to that experience was just one of the little things that the secretary can do that, it may not mean much in the grand scheme of things, but to that guy, that touch with that individual, it's important.
One of the, I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I had kind of put as a condition of becoming secretary was that I wasn't going to do stuff that committees were supposed to be doing, because forever we've got committees that never do anything. Their name shows up on the notice and nothing ever happens. So don't come to me and tell me you want me to send a card from the lodge to someone in the hospital. We have a visitation committee. That is their role. Now, if that committee needs envelopes or stamps or cards to send, I'm more than happy to provide the chair of that committee with those materials. And that is my job, because I'm the one authorized to expend money, if you will, that then comes back and is reported to the lodge and so on. But don't have me doing the job of 10 other committees that should be doing work for the lodge. The way I've described the role of a secretary, if you think of it this way, the worshipful master is like chairman of the board. The secretary really is, in my opinion, like the CEO of the company. We make sure that the bills get paid. In essence, actually, the treasurer is the one that actually, in our structure, that sends the stuff out. But we're the revolving door of stuff into the lodge and out of the lodge. We make sure that we keep things going. I actually believe that the secretaries tend to be more up to date if they're connected with stuff coming from the Grand Lodge, for example, certainly more than the 53 past masters that we have who remember it only as they had it in their year. But frankly, I think you develop a lot of respect from your members because you do that. The other thing is that I'm not afraid to say I don't know the answer to that, but I'll get back with you so that people see me as somebody not only that has a lot of knowledge coming from the Grand Lodge and from the district deputy and so on, but also somebody who will not just BS their way out of a question.
Okay, we have to stay on for a couple of more minutes because Larry just brought another bottle to the meeting.
It's a 2-bottle meeting.
So Pete, you're a relatively new secretary, is that right?
Yeah, I'm. I took over in January as the secretary of our Tall Cedars chapter or forest, and it's I don't know. Oh, geez, Larry.
Do that again. I want to get a picture.
Larry's nursing from a bottle.
All right, there we
There
go.
you
Okay, good deal.
I will get up on my repeating self thing and say the advice I give to every new secretary is to stay on top of stuff. The time that I got in trouble was when I said, "Oh, meeting was yesterday, but I'll wait to do that until before the next meeting. I've got all month."
Absolutely.
And you know what? It didn't do it, and then crap. So stay on top of stuff. It's the best. As with so many things in life, if you don't let it get away from you, it's a great job.
Like doing the dishes.
One of the most rewarding experiences I've had in Freemasonry is being able to serve as Grand Secretary of St. Thomas of Acon for the United States. But being a secretary of secretaries has really been a learning experience, because there's one thing to be a secretary of a body. There's another thing to being the secretary that all the secretaries report to, and trying to manage that annual return process and making sure the master database matches their local database. And managing that process has really been a learning experience and has given me a whole lot more respect and understanding of what grand secretaries are going through in trying to wrangle us as secretaries.
So I think in order to sort of tie this up in a ribbon, because a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are not secretaries. And those of you that are, God bless you. We love you and we appreciate you more than you'll ever know. But if you're not a secretary, please understand that guy is a guy who has another life outside of this, and he's got better things to do than chase you around for your dues payment or send out letters for the committee that's supposed to be being done on your behalf and all of that stuff that we've talked about, right? He's the secretary of the lodge is the pivot point of the whole thing. And as Masons, as members of the lodge, it's our responsibility to make his job as easy as we can. Fair?
Amen.
Yep.
And most importantly, if you think you don't want to be in the organization anymore, quit before the end of the year, because if it's January comes, we have to pay your dues to National, your assessment.
All right. And on that, we're going to go to break. Matt, stay with us. We're going to hang out a little bit more and chat, and we'll be right back.
Hello, brethren. Dutchy Doug here with another story from my lodge, the Brogan Plough number 377. Now, we had quite the goings-on at our March stated meeting. Yes, you heard me right, our March stated meeting. Now, I know that all Masonic events were to be canceled in March due to the coronavirus. The problem is that given our rural location, most news never makes it on time. In fact, we're usually at least 4 weeks behind the rest of Pennsylvania Masons. Do you guys know what the word foreshadowing is? We didn't, but we do now. For our March meeting, we had a first degree on the trestle board. We were all excited to be bringing in young Jeremiah Niling to the craft. He's the son and grandson of current members. Now, as many of you know, it is customary for some Masons to razz any new member with stories of what to expect during their initiation. And given our agricultural background, many jokes about goats being involved were told to young Jeremiah. Some of the brethren had Jeremiah so worked up before the degree that he was visibly nervous as he entered the preparing room. As young Jeremiah came on, duly prepared with his guide, we all watched closely. We were all so concentrated on the floor work that none of us noticed that the one outside door in the southeast corner of the lodge was cracked open. As Jeremiah and his guide were making their laps, wouldn't you know who happened to wander into the room? Why, one of old lady Giesema's goats. I think his name was Buppy. I've heard her yell at that goat before. Anyway, in strolled the goat, and before we noticed, he let out a good lot. Blah! You should have seen Jeremiah chump. Hell, we all chumped. Visions of all the terrible stories and jokes that we had told Jeremiah came flooding into our heads. One of the brothers on the sideline tried to discreetly grab the goat to take him outside. But what many of you city folk don't know is that goats are pretty darn agile and ornery. Old Buppy had no intentions of being led anywhere. Jeremiah's guide, Brother Orson Fearing, whispered in Jeremiah's ear, "Stand fast and await further instruction." Jeremiah yelled out, "I ain't going anywhere, and neither are you." He then yelled out, "Pop, what the heck did you get me into?" I jumped up from behind the secretary's desk in an attempt to catch old Buppy. You know, I used to be a pro at goat wrangling, but that was many moons ago. Buppy must have been listening outside the lodge for some time because he knew exactly where to go. He quickly bolted west, headbutted the junior master of ceremonies, and took his staff. Now Buppy was armed and dangerous. What were we to do? For whatever reason, one of the brothers on the sideline, Sammy Gailreba, just happened to have some carrots in his pants pocket. He pulled them out and showed them to Buppy. Buppy's eyes lit up and quickly dropped the staff and wandered over to Sammy. Brother Sammy grabbed Buppy and led him out the south gate to return to Old Lady Gizama. After all the excitement was over, we completed the degree and Jeremiah was brought to Lite. From now on, we will be more cognizant of truly tiling all of the lodge before we open up. I guess the old Pennsylvania Dutch adage of learn by doing was proven correct again. Till next time, work hard, stay plumb, and out in the lights when you leave the room.
In Masonic news today, in a stunning effort to err on the side of caution, the Grand Lodge of Harrisburg has declared that Masonic activities will be suspended until sometime in 2027. Secretaries in the affected lodges will be expected to publish entertaining and enlightening regular notices. Worshipful masters of those lodges will have a new past master's jewel, featuring an oversized asterisk in place of the letter G. That's the Masonic news. So loaded was.
See, Josh, you got to do half a year last year, so you might still get a real PM after your name.
Yeah, I think. I think I've gotten 7 or 6 meetings in.
Yeah, back in my year, we used to have face-to-face meetings.
Which minor league baseball makes you really eligible, so you're good. All right. So what we're going to talk about now is a little bit about what we teased you about earlier, but we're still going to be teasing you because we don't really have all the details worked out, but that's just how we are. This is, after all, Masonic Lite podcast. So in our next episode on Wednesday, the 22nd of April, we will be recording a first ever live broadcast of the degree of the digital nights of the, what the hell is it? What is it called now? What the digital order of Knights of the Quarantine. That's what it is. The digital order of Knights of the Quarantine. So Seth actually kind of teased this out on the last show and said, "Oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did this thing?" And a couple of the guys said, "Well, yeah, it would be cool." So we actually wrote a degree, and we're going to be conferring that. I say conferring. I say presenting that on the next podcast. So there will be a Facebook event that comes out. We're doing this as a fundraiser for relief efforts. We're still trying to work out the details of the charity that we're going to be supporting in this, but it will be a fundraiser for relief for COVID-19 for the Brothers of the Craft. It's going to be an open degree. It's going to be kind of like the the Muscovite degree or whatever else degree do we have that we talk about, the Yellow Dog degree. There's a couple of other side degrees that we do just for fun, just for fundraisers. So watch our podcast website MasonicLite.com, and also our Facebook page for details on the Eventbrite that will allow you to be a charter attendee of the very first ever presentation of the Digital Order of the Knights Quarantine. There is a fantastic jewel to be presented for this, and it will be something that can be worn with pride in your overstuffed pocket of pocket jewels that can attach to your Korean War veteran general thing, lapel extender, that Masonic lapel extender that can carry all that stuff. So anyway, that's it. Please watch for it, look for it, share it with your friends. You don't have to be a Mason to witness this presentation, but at the end of the day, it's reaching out and utilizing this new digital technology that we're all being forced to learn in sharing the light and going out and staying connected with our brothers and our friends and our families. That's what it's all about. So that's it. Who's next?
Well, I think I'm sorry.
Wow, I am the thread killer. That's what. That's my screen name is Thread Killer. I just it's well done.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things, Seth has kind of got us some cast members for the show, for the episode, and also he put us in touch with John Bridegroom, who is a previous guest, and his the Master's Craft, Master's Jewel. What's his website?
Master's Craft.
The Master's Craft.
Yeah, so he's going to be designing the jewel for us, and we're whatever we're going to charge for the degree, it'll be a donation. You'll get the jewel, and any money above cost will go directly to the charity. So it'll be a fun time. And while there's a lot of seriousness going on with this pandemic, there's also some, I don't know, a lot of us are stuck at home and kind of frustrated, and it's silly. So we're going to try and focus on that side of it.
I was thinking about this today, Pete, and I remember after 9/11, I was watching Saturday Night Live about 3 weeks after 9/11, and the guest host was Rudy Giuliani. And the cast was all behind him on the stage, and they said, "Mr. Mayor, is it okay for us to be funny?" And he looked at them and said, "Why start now?" So that's kind of what we're doing is we're just trying to lighten it up a little bit, and we understand the seriousness of it all, and we just want to let you know that we're here, and with this 20 for 20 thing that Tim was talking about, reach out, reuse this technology, stay connected with your brothers, stay connected with your families, with your neighbors. Have a neighborhood barbecue on Zoom. Why not? What the hell? Just get it, just stay connected. That's what this technology really is all about.
Pete, I don't know if Jack shared with you, but we were talking about whether or not this thing should have a certificate for membership. And I said, well, it's not really an organization, so it shouldn't have a certificate, but a receipt suitable for framing would be very appropriate for the order.
Because that's just who we are, right?
A receipt suitable for framing.
Yes. And that we can certainly do. So please join us. Look for that on the Facebook page and the website. Share it with your friends, your neighbors, anybody at all. It's not strictly a Masonic thing, so don't worry about any Masonic affiliation. Just share it like crazy, and we'd really appreciate it. So.
All right, so I think we're about ready to wrap this show up. Matt, we want to thank you for being with us tonight, and we'll make sure we include links to the Working Tools podcast as in the show notes for this episode. Make sure you give them a listen. We really appreciate you being part of tonight's show.
Oh, I couldn't be more thrilled to be here and see how the sausage is made.
It's not a pretty sight.
It's good to know it's not just us.
Well,
as a Central Pennsylvania guy, that's good. That's good.
You have anything coming up in the next couple of weeks Masonically?
Oh gosh, just a whole lot of Zoom meetings. I got the Grand Secretary this evening, and tomorrow Masonic Education and all that sort of good stuff. There's a whole lot of Zoom going on, and I really do want to thank you guys for having me here. It's seeing Jack do the voice of Walter of the newscaster was really cool. But no, I really enjoy being here, and just like Jack said, if there's anybody out there who's having any kind of difficulty, for the love of Pete, reach out to your brothers, reach out to the in Washington, there's Washington Masonic Charities, reach out to them, reach out to your lodge. There's just no reason not to. Give them a phone call, and I know in our lodge there's 100 guys who are willing to help you out.
True. Seth, how about you? You got anything coming up Masonically other than the degree we just talked about? Unmute yourself first. Try unmuting yourself.
Sorry, unmute. I'll plug the 2 national Zoom meetings I've heard about. So I mentioned earlier about the 17th degree presented by the Northern Masonic Jurisdiction. So if you're a member of the NMJ, please tune in to see that. I've seen it. It was presented in the Valley of Reading, and it is very well done. All joking aside, it is an excellent production. I did also see the Allied Masonic Degrees are doing a Zoom meeting in the next couple of weeks. They're having the grandson of Harry Truman speak via a Zoom meeting. So if you're in the Allied Masonic Degrees and able to check that out, I think it's gonna be very worthwhile. It's an opportunity we wouldn't get otherwise, so I'll be tuning into that.
Awesome. Northern Masonic Jurisdiction. Why, we here in the Southern Masonic Jurisdiction turn up our noses.
Considering he's north of us.
Exactly.
Washington State's in the Southern Masonic Jurisdiction.
We are in.
So, again, one more time, a plug for the nightly toast to absent brethren that occurs. You can check the show notes. You can check our Facebook page, or you can go to the Eureka West Shore Lodge number 302 public Facebook page, where we have an event posted in the announcement section with both the connection and the password that you'll need to get into that. Would love to have double the number that we have. So come join when you can. That'd be great. Anybody else have anything Masonically coming up?
I'm just going to be drawing lots of. So I think one of the things we're going to do is for the people witnessing the degree, it's going to be like you're watching a PowerPoint, and you're going to see the characters. Be like a film strip. Let's just say it'll be fun.
And we're still trying to figure out exactly how the technology needs to work for that, especially given that we could have several.
We could have anywhere from 2 to 7 people viewing this. We could. It's true.
Or actually 700. I mean, that's our.
and Larry would have us on 7 different planets.
That's right. That's
Yes.
right. All right. Well, good show, everybody. I think we're ready to wrap this thing up. Larry, let's cue the chickens and take us home, Larry.
A special. I thought the rum would clear it up. Special thanks to Appel Lodge 665 for making the vacant broadcast studio possible. It's still there. Cold, dark, and dank. But thanks again. Thanks to Josh Lamberton, producer and director, who continues to make our show very good. Thanks to Jack Harley, our news director, Tim Dedman, our marketing director, and our Masonic Lite contributors, Michelle Snyder, Jim Stevens, and Doug Madden for Dutchy Doug.
And Seth Anthony.
And Seth Anthony for joining us. Yes, one of the
doing
on the get-go. By the way, just so you know, we are completing our 4th year this month. The beginning of May. And Seth has been kind of with us ever since. So thanks, Seth.
With you on and off.
But I do have an announcement to make. Our Masonic Lite official spokesman, Howie Basin, has asked me to make mention that they have a new director of purchasing from us. Her name is Lois Bitter. And also he wanted to let everybody know that our credit counselor, Maxed Out, is no longer with us. Anyhow, I did want to mention one more thing here. Pete has mentioned to me that his blogs provide him with unconditional love. But he also has a cat that reminds him that he doesn't deserve it. Balance. This is Larry. Thanks for listening.
This is Jack.
Bye, everybody.
This is Tim.
This is Pete. Seth, Josh. And Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Maybe we'll see you in the other call.